Nolan Wells bombshell. A witness tells us tonight, I went with Nolan's mother to the coroner's office, and this is what I saw. Josh, thank you for being with us. The
Morning, ma'am.
day unfolded when Nolan's body was found very bizarrely. You were there. I'm going to get to your trip to the coroner's office along with the family, but I want you to start at the beginning. What happened at the beginning of that day? We believe that Nolan likely died on July the 4th. Let's start with the day that Nolan's body was found and that you ended up at the coroner's office. Start at the beginning.
So early that morning, I deployed some resources. I deployed an aircraft, fixed-wing aircraft that wheels up at 0635, as you can see right there from the photographs. I was on my way to the Lake Mars boat launch. That's where the Tactical Operations Center was set up. And I received a phone call. Received that phone call from the Sheriff's Department that a body had been found. Didn't say who it was. I was probably 15 minutes out from the location. I then received a phone call within minutes after the conversation from the sheriff's office from Nolan's mother, Christine, and she was frantic. Again, that mother's intuition, she knew what was going on. So I'm meeting at the boat launch. I was there about 15 minutes ahead of time. Had
Hold on
conversations
just
with
one
the
moment.
sheriff.
Hold on.
Yep.
For those of you just joining us,
Yep.
Josh Gill is with us. He is the United Cajun Navy Incident Commander in the search for Nolan Wells. You stated that you received a phone call from Nolan's mother, Christine. You said she was frantic. What was she saying?
So again, I'm going to paraphrase. She said that they had found him, that they had found a body. My biggest concern at that exact moment was to make sure that she was safe, that she had, a safe way to get there, because it was the beginning of what's more than likely to be the worst day of her life. Again, so
Okay,
continuing
hold on. Josh, you got me drinking from the fire hydrant here. Every word you're saying sparks 100 questions. So,
Sure.
Nolan Wells' mother calls you. Okay, where was she when she called?
She was en route to the boat launch as well. We were meeting there
Okay.
for the search.
Okay, had she been told that a body had been found?
Yet when she called me, so we had earlier communication, but via text, when she called me, she told me that a body had been found. She had been notified by the sheriff's department.
Oh, gosh. No wonder she was frantic. So she calls you. She's just been told by the sheriff a body has been found. She calls you. You're going to the boat launch. What boat launch? Where?
That's the Lake Mars boat launch.
Why there?
So that's where the operation was set up. That's where the search operations, the Tactical Operations Center was there. They had a mobile command unit, and the multiple entities and agencies were basing their operations out of there. So what it is boat launch again. They could launch rather quickly. It's a protected area to launch and then make that run to Horn Island and the surrounding areas.
Okay, so you agreed with her. Did she ask you to meet at the boat launch?
Oh, she knew I was going to that boat launch, and she actually asked me early that morning, where we were going to meet. And I told her, here's the best place. Here's where the operation is beginning.
Okay.
It was a secured location by the sheriff's department. So, that's where they were running their operation on. And that's a common practice.
Question, do you know why Nolan's mother wanted you to go with her to Horn Island?
So we had communication. She called me, literally called me. We had a voice conversation that Sunday morning, about 7:00, 7:30. She had called and asked for some assistance. After that phone call, I asked to memorialize all of our conversations so I could go back and look at information. And that's not uncommon
What kind
for
of
families to
assistance
call
did
us
she
and ask
need?
us, find my son. There it is.
So she asked you to help find her son, that assistance. Okay, got it. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, so she asked for that assistance, find my son, find Nolan. Started gathering information on who he is, who he was with, where he was. She made it very clear that he was with some friends, that they had been on Horn Island. So then I start launching resources immediately. And then
Okay,
after I
hold on
launched the
right there.
resources, I start.
Hold on.
Yep,
Josh, what
yep.
specifically did she say about him going to Horn Island with friends, if you can recall?
So she said that he went to Horn Island with friends. It's July 4th, and Horn Island's a location that's well known and well visited by people partying and hanging out for July 4th. It's a huge boating community, and that was a location where boats congregate and enjoy the 4th.
Okay, so she says he went to Horn Island on the 4th with friends. Got it, okay. So you meet at the boat ramp. And when you first saw her, what was her demeanor?
So she came to me. She gets out of the vehicle, comes to me, gives me a big hug. Again, it's a mother who her intuition is that her body was just found. So obviously sad.
According to what we learned,
and
the moment she gets out of the vehicle, she runs straight to you and is hyperventilating.
Absolutely. She came straight to
What
me. I mean,
happened?
20 people. She gives me a big hug and starts crying. And look, I'm a softie. I started crying with her. We literally sat in the parking lot on the ground in the gravel for probably 15 minutes. And we had some pretty deep discussions. She cried. I cried with her, and her husband was there as well. And I want to say this, that he's a very stoic individual, and he stood there with his hand on both of our shoulders and was a part of everything. It was one of those moments you don't forget.
What was she saying? What was she saying? I mean, in a moment like that, how do you console a mother, Josh, that has been told by this disembodied voice on the phone, we found a body? I mean, what was she saying? Did she not want to believe it was Nolan? Did she believe it was Nolan? At this point, she had not ID'd a body yet. Nobody had identified that this was Nolan. Was she holding out hope? What was going on?
She knew. Again, mother's intuition is strong. It's very strong. In her heart, she knew. As far as what she was saying, why is always the question, you know? She asked God, why? And the rest of the conversations were just, memories real quick. And I'm assuming everything was just flashing in front of her eyes because, again, it's the beginning of the hardest time of her life. I'm losing her son. I was there just to console her and to help anyone I possibly could.
What was the dad saying, if anything?
He was, again, he was really quiet. He was a quiet gentleman, but his physical presence afforded hers, made her feel safe. And I will say that, he stood there with us, on the ground. He's there. And his presence said a lot, and it meant a lot to his wife, to Miss Christine. And again, that's a tough time for him as well.
So she's crying. You state that she knows deep inside that that body is her boy, her son. You start crying. Did you remain standing in the parking lot or did you sit down?
No, ma'am. Like I said, when she first came to me, she gave me a big hug, and I wrapped my arms around her, and we sat down. We sat very quickly. We remained seating for quite some time to have that discussion, say
On
a
the
prayer. I
parking
did
lot?
pray with her right there. Yes, ma'am. On the ground in the gravel.
Y'all were sitting
Right.
on the. And you said she was hyperventilating. You sit on the ground. I believe I heard you say that you started praying.
Always. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Was she praying that it wasn't Nolan?
So, and again, I'm paraphrasing and going from the best of my memory. It was more of a prayer for peace and comfort is what I did. And I always ask for that, and then for answers, and I prayed Godspeed if it is Nolan, and for the Lord to put His protecting hands over us and everything that we do, and to be with this family and this mother, especially during these hard times. It's an emotional time.
I cannot even imagine. I'm trying to get my head around the picture of you and Miss Christine sitting on the ground in a parking lot with her crying after just been told we found a body, and she knows it's Nolan.
Well, sure.
I thank God that you were there. I thank God that you and Nolan's dad were there to help her. I don't know how she even stood up. How did you get her to stand up?
So it was about 15 minutes we were there on the ground, and a couple times the sheriff came up and he saw what was going on, and the sheriff's staff, and they understood that it was one of those moments where we need some space. She finally, and I hate to say she called her composure, because it was an emotional time for me as well as the father, and we stood up, and the sheriff came over, and, he started
Did you
discussing what the
help her
process
up?
would be. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
I don't know
Yes,
how she even stood up.
by the
Okay, so
grace of
you help
God.
her up off the ground. Yeah. Okay, then what happens?
So a family and friends started to arrive, and the security let them in, and the sheriff came up, and the sheriff again, um, he had to help deliver that news, that a body was found, and do his formal, and I hate to say notification, because at this point he didn't say if it was Nolan or not, um, but he explained that a body was found and where they would be bringing that body to. Um, and from there, the family gathered, and it was, I'd say, a matter of 15, 20 minutes maybe. We were then escorted. Christine asked me to accompany them to the coroner's office, which I was extremely honored to do so. And then the sheriff's department escorted us to that coroner's office.
Can I ask you something, Josh? When the sheriff came over, was it the sheriff or a deputy sheriff?
It was the sheriff.
The sheriff.
He was,
He comes over
yes, ma'am.
and formally tells her what she was already told on the phone. A body has been found. Had the body already been taken to the coroner's office?
It was en route. So he was en route to the coroner's office, and he told us, he told Christine, um, here's what's going on. Here's where you need to go, for further information. And again, extremely professional, extremely polite. And the biggest word I can use was he was compassionate. His staff was extremely compassionate. I can't take that
How
away
was
from him.
she at that moment? Was she just numb? Did she ask questions, or did she just stand there and take it? What was her response to the sheriff coming over face to face telling her we found a body? Because, a lot of times, this from all of the bodies that you have helped recover. Guys, joining me is Josh Gill. He's our special guest tonight with the United Cajun Navy. He's the incident commander, and he was in on the search for Nolan from the beginning, and he went to the coroner's office along with the family, along with the mother and the father. So when the sheriff was, I guess, formally delivering this to her, a lot of people, when they hear it on the phone, they don't want to believe it. I didn't when it happened to me. I thought, did I get that wrong? So he comes up and tells her to her face, and there's no way to mistake what he's saying. He's right there in front of her. How did Miss Christine respond?
Just as any parent would respond. Tears, shock, disbelief, I think, are some good words. But again, I don't want to take away from the compassion and the professionalism of the sheriff's department at that point. And there were more people coming up, right? And at that point, the sheriff had conversation with the mother again, and the family, and just explained the process on what was going to happen next as far as where Nolan was going. And then moving from there. But I do want to add that, during these conversations, I reiterated to the mother and, Mr. Elmore, that Nolan will be treated with the utmost dignity and respect. through the process. I wanted to explain that because that's something that parents always need to hear. Family members that their loved one will be treated with dignity and respect.
So you guys make it to the coroner's office. What happens when you get to the coroner's office and Nolan's body is already there?
Correct. So we go to the coroner's office, we sit down. The coroner, he comes in, rather quickly, 10, 15 seconds once the table was filled with all the people, family members, friends, myself.
What table? Were you in a conference room?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. A conference
Oh
room
gosh,
table.
you know, at the medical examiners or coroners, everything is so sterile. And everyone I've ever
So
been to.
So this was like an office conference room. You walked right in the door, and there it was. Didn't really have that feeling of a coroner's office, if that's fair to say. More like a business office conference room. Um, he walks in, very polite gentleman, very professional, well spoken, soft spoken as well, and basically said that they found a body, and from initial appearance, he identified him as Nolan. He did want to take a DNA swab or get a DNA sample from the family just for further confirmation and for, I guess, record keeping, whatever it was. But then he also she asked about the condition, and he went into there were no immediate signs of foul play. Okay. To me, again, my opinion in hearing this is no signs of blunt force trauma, or any I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, any signs of foul play, what we would consider that.
Well, I guess they hadn't seen that big red mark on the back of his occipital yet, underneath the skin. And I take it at this juncture, Josh, his throat had not been dissected to look for potential subcutaneous bruising. So
Sure.
you're telling me that from a cursory look at Nolan Wells's body, there was no sign of foul play, such as a stab wound or a bullet wound or bruises, deep gouges on the head. That, in my experience, having tried so many homicide cases, I cannot count them, is what you get from a cursory look at a body. Would you agree?
So, correct. I'm not a medical examiner nor a coroner. I have gathered information and heard multiple people speak on that, especially about the red spot, right? We'll quote unquote call it the red spot. And as I appreciate that may be pooling or whatever, it could possibly be cellular decomposition. Again, I'm not a medical examiner or a coroner, but I do know what the coroner said at that first meeting with him.
Let's get back to what happened in that conference room. So you're there, the mom's there, the dad's there, the coroner comes in, very calm, very soft-spoken, and tells Miss Christine that he believes it's Nolan based on physical appearance and description. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
What was her reaction? Because if it were me,
Again,
I would have been holding out, it's not him, it's not him, it's somebody that looks like him. I don't believe it's him. He's out there. If I can just get out of here, I can go find him. What was her reaction?
again, it was quiet and it was a very emotional time for the family as well. I personally believe at that point she accepted that it was him.
Why do you
And
say that?
started.
You must have observed something that makes you say that.
Again, it just actions, and not denial, not beating on the table. It's not him. It's not him. Let's go. Let's keep looking. Um, and her being in the medical profession as well as I believe, a nurse practitioner. I think I will never say the word accept. She understood that what was being told to her. Right. Yeah. I'm
Was
not a
she still
parent.
crying?
I don't have any. Absolutely. She still cries to this day. And look, so I want to make this very clear to everybody that I support Christine in what she's doing. There's not a playbook that's written for a grieving mother who doesn't know what happened to her son. And I truly hope and pray every day,
Same.
as well as my organization does, that she finds peace and comfort, and she's able to accept
And you know what else, Josh?
whatever the results are.
I don't know
Yes.
how this would have unfolded if it had not been for the United Cajun Navy. I'm just putting that out there. For some reason, y'all have been
Thank you.
gotten so much hate, but you guys were out there at the get-go. You're the one that went with Miss Christine to the coroner's office. You were there. You're the one that helped her stand up off the ground when she was sitting on that pavement crying. That was you, United Cajun Navy.
Yes, ma'am.
I support her too, and my fondest dream is that we find out that this was an accident. But until we get to that point, this investigation must go on. So he comes in and tells her that. Then what happens?
So there were some questions, right? He asked the family if there was anything they needed to know. And I asked a question. And the question I asked was, can you please explain the process on where Nolan's going to go, what's going to happen from there? And he did. He explained that he would be going to the crime lab, I believe it was, on what was going on for further autopsy. Again, and I'm paraphrasing this. And we all understood it. We understood that what was going to happen, where it was going, and what would happen from there. Again, and I have to say this and reiterate this, that the family was in shock. I mean, it's horrible news to receive. I can't imagine it. I'm an empath, and I still can't possibly imagine how it feels to receive that information, that your son is no longer, here with the family, no matter what the outcome is. Um, here's the issue, though, is that we have to be prepared to accept and understand what's told to us as far as results of the grand jury or whatever it is. I want to make sure that people understand the prayers for peace and comfort are there daily for this family as well as the nation, because this is a hard time for the nation and Ocean Springs in particular.
What happened then? You asked about the procedure. Let me make sure I understand this. The coroner identified Nolan based on description, because I've seen a photo, which we have not shown, of Nolan's body where it washed up. Well, I say washed up. That's really a term of art. I don't know that he washed up. I don't know how his body got right there, because it seems to me it was half in the sand and half in the water, right? So I don't know how it got there. That said, he made this ID based on the description given to him of Nolan, but wasn't the actual ID made from dental records?
So I don't know. I don't know what the actual ID was made from, if it was from dental records or if it was a DNA swab. He did discuss collecting DNA with the mother before we left. I did not
Were you
witness
there
that. I
when the
did not
DNA was
see.
collected?
I was not. I don't know how they caught it, how they got it. But it was a discussion. But again, the coroner was confident, and his confidence level was high that was Nolan. And I think that's what Miss Christine wanted to do, or wanted to understand. And the reason being, I think that there's that professional courtesy of, understanding he's the coroner. She is a nurse practitioner, and he wouldn't tell her those things if it was not in his heart.
Let me understand, as I move forward in the questioning of Josh Gill, Incident Commander, United Cajun Navy, with Miss Christine Nolan's mother at the time she was taken to the coroner's office. Dave Mack, Crime Stories investigative reporter, very quickly, wasn't Nolan identified through dental records? That's a yes, no, please.
Yes, ma'am. He was identified with dental records.
To Jeff Gentry joining us. Jeff, thank you for waiting so patiently. Forensic certified bloodstain pattern analyst, crime scene analyst, death investigator, author of Forensic Science. Jeff, why did they have to use dental records to identify Nolan Wells' body?
Nancy, usually dental records are used when other forms of identification cannot be utilized. So the first thing that we always try to do is to visually identify somebody. And if you have family there or friends or an ID, something to reference to visually identify the person, then that is the first step. So just getting a general idea of who they are. Then you want to move to a scientific form of identification. And that is something based on a scientific discipline. So there is proof that it is the person when it goes to court or additional questions are asked later. Your first form of scientific identification is fingerprints. That's always going to be the easiest and fastest. And if he had an ID or driver's license, then there should be a fingerprint on file to be able to identify this person rather quickly. However, in this case, if he had been deceased for a day or two before he was found, then forms of scientific identification like fingerprints or even like a visual identification may not necessarily be available. So in those scenarios, then you move to alternate forms of identification like dental records. So that you would have to get the person's dental records from when they were alive to compare them against dental records taken when they're deceased at the autopsy. The last form of identification that's used, which is the most expensive and most time consuming, would be DNA. However, if you're going to take this case to court and it's going to be tried like a homicide, then you would probably want to use a form of identification like DNA because it's much more solid. You can verify with percentages how likely it is that the person is who you believe they are. So that's why dental records were most likely used in this case versus something simple and fast like fingerprints or visual identification.
Jeff Gentry can be found at evidenceoverassumption.com. Jeff, my takeaway from what you just said is they could not make a visual identification and they could not use fingerprints. You said those were the first two choices, then dental, then DNA. Why would they not be able to make a visual ID?
I'm assuming because he was outside and in the elements for a day or so. It's hot, it's July, it's very warm weather. However, in most cases where I have seen drownings where the person is underwater for a period of time, their body is pretty well preserved. Unless we're talking about like multiple days, weeks that this person is underwater, usually the water is cooler temperature. And if that person is face down in the water or completely submerged, their body is pretty well preserved until they surface. Usually a body after a couple of days surfaces. So I'm really surprised that he was on the shore. I've never personally investigated a drowning case where a person just ends up on the shore, especially if there's not a strong current or waves. Usually in bodies of water, the person will stay in pretty much the location where they go underwater if it's witnessed. They don't usually move around much after they have submerged or gone underwater. So to me, it's very concerning that he was on the shore or that his body surfaced that quickly. But that's what I am guessing is why they couldn't do an immediate visual identification with the family or even fingerprints. So I would really like to know more about the condition of the body. That's what I am assessing as a death investigator when I respond to a scene. So there should be a death investigation report from a death investigator who has experience looking at bodies and has experience examining these type of things to show exactly what his condition was when he was found. And if the body is decomposed more than what you would normally expect in a drowning case, that should be a big red flag. That's something that you definitely need to look into further.
So you're saying, let me follow up on what you just said. You find it odd that he was quasi on the shore. You also stated that location where the body is found is typically where they went under. You also said that the body must have been too decomposed to make a facial ID. I did not hear an explanation as to why fingerprint ID was impossible.
Fingerprint identification would be impossible if the hands were dried out to an extent where they can't be fingerprinted. Sometimes people that are underwater, or if the hands are underwater, the skin, just like if you're in the bathtub for a prolonged period of time, the skin ends up looking the same way. It just gets kind of wrinkled, and it's very hard to get a usable or workable fingerprint in those scenarios. So one scenario would be the body is too decomposed to get a fingerprint or a visual identification. And then the alternate scenario is the body or the hands were exposed to the water too long to where they just are not able to get a good workable print. So those are the different possibilities. But again, his position at the edge of the bank or partially in the water, that's really concerning because there's tons of people around that area. If he was in that position or on the shore decomposing for a day or so, why did nobody see him? Those would be my type of questions that I would ask if I were a death investigator responding to this scene.
Jeff, I'm looking right now at the photo of his body. And it's about, the beach is flat, and I would say it's about 3 to 4 feet from where there's nothing but sand, no water. It looks like it's at just as the water is starting, like you could walk in it very easily and your ankles may not even get wet. He's not out in the water at all. He's on the beach and on wet sand. That's the way to put it. It's wet sand. He's not out in the water, Jeff Gentry. What does that mean, if anything?
That's really abnormal. I would have a ton of questions in that case. I would wonder if there's no waves, no strong current, why is that body up on a shore? How did it get there? And just like when we're looking at blood evidence or other forms of evidence, if something is in a certain position within a scene, you have to question how it got there. I have investigated a lot of deaths, bodies in canals, rivers, lakes, large bodies of water, never really near the ocean to where you would expect somebody to wash up to shore. But in these cases, even though there's strong current, waves, large bodies of water, I've never really seen bodies up on a shore, especially up out of the water enough to where they could decompose significantly to where they can't be identified or can't be fingerprinted. So that would be a very big question that I would have in this case is, with the absence of waves, with the absence of a strong current, how in the world did this 19-year-old man end up on shore out of the water?
Josh, I'm going to pick back up with you and Nolan's family at the coroner's office, but you disagree with Jeff's characteristic. Explain.
Wind, wave, tides, currents. If you look, there's also there's some pictures, some aerial pictures that show driftwood way on the beach. Those 4 things are what impacted, as I appreciate, where Nolan ultimately ended up. If you look in one of those pictures, ma'am, a wave is about to come right over and crest right near where the body's at. So that shows that there is some wave actions and some currents. The winds, the waves, the tides, the currents have a huge impact on anything that's put into that water. It's known as the washing machine. It's a high tide, high current area. So that's that was the first things that I looked at whenever I saw that picture, and that is one of those pictures that I showed to the sheriff immediately as I received it. The stuff that's dark in that picture right there, I believe that's debris, and that debris could have easily or was washed up on that island. And if you look at the picture as well into the water, the white is that's wave action, either from wind, tides, or currents. So, and it's going towards the beach. When you walk down the beach and you find shells and you find, the bottle with the message in it, it gets washed up on the beach.
Okay, so I think in simple terms, you're saying you believe the body was washed up from the water to that location. Okay, and Gentry is saying typically a body is found where it goes in the water. So you're right. Tidal experts, water experts will have to determine that. I want to get back to you at the coroner's office. A dental exam was used to make the ID, which leads me to another question. If his face and his fingertips were so decomposed that they can't make an ID, then how do they know there was not bruising or there was not skin marks on his face, on his hands? That's a whole nother thing. You're not a medical examiner. I get it. But that's a question that needs to be answered back to you. The family, Miss Christine, the dad, were asked to provide DNA. Okay. You did not see the DNA taken, probably a buccal swab. What happened then?
So if I may add one thing, is I think that'd be a great question to ask the coroner is, How did he identify? Because he was pretty sure, in his best professional opinion, that was Nolan. And maybe he wanted the dental records just out of professionalism.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, isn't that one of the most definite ways to identify? Sure, and out of
Yeah.
courtesy to the family, let's do it the easy way
Yeah.
for you as well as to get the dental records. So moving forward, ma'am, we left. We went to the house. There was a gathering at the house, and the people started to pour in, and it was a very emotional time. Again, the friends and family that were there they were extremely welcoming to myself. Todd Terrell also came he came within, I don't know, 30 minutes. We stayed there for about 30 minutes. We had conversation with the mother, Mr. Elmore, and some of the other family members and discussed a couple things with them. GoFundMe being one of them. And we wanted to assist with that as far as the development and helping to spread the word on that piece as well as offer our services. And anything that we could possibly do to assist this family in this time of grief, we're there for them. Still there today. Anything that they possibly need, we're here to provide. If it's a shoulder to cry on, we're there. If she wants to get in an airplane or if she wants to get in a boat and go back out to Horn Island, we're there. We got it for her. She's been offered those services. We just want her to know and the family to know that we're there. We're 110% supportive because, again, there's no playbook on how to grieve the loss of a child.
Josh, at that time when you were at Nolan's home after leaving the coroner's office with the family, was there any concern that there had been foul play?
It really didn't come up. It just didn't come up. I think that whole grieving process and it hit her hard when they got back to the house. At what point did potential foul play or the thoughts of foul play or the accusations come into mind? I don't know.
I think you're probably right that at that time she walks in, Josh, and she comes into a home where she knows her son will never be back in his room ever again. And when you see all the relatives and neighbors come in, it gets real. It's real.
It does.
And the pictures
It's
of Nolan are
extremely
still
real.
out. I mean, all the
Yep.
family photos are there, and I don't know when it hits you that that's all you have going forward. That's it. Photos and memories. Photos and memories.
So, ma'am, if I
Question.
can say one thing,
Please
I
do.
I hear the emotion in your voice, right? I can hear it in your voice, and that's a sympathetic emotion for that mother, knowing that she has at that point when she walked through that door, it became real, and it became the hardest day, the beginning of the hardest time of her life. Um, Again, that's I pray every day for the peace and comfort. But ma'am, seeing that coming from you and understanding the emotion behind it and what this lady's going through and what this family's going through and what the community's going through, it's very important. It's important to know that there's a lot of people that are extremely upset and they lost a community member who was loved and cherished. So, it's a tough time for everybody.
Josh, did you speak with Nolan's mother again after that day?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We've had numerous conversations.
Regarding?
And so we had conversation about a forensic pathologist, a secondary forensic pathologist. She wanted one. I gave her a recommendation that I got from somebody. She also discussed an attorney. She sent those messages as well. But the majority of our conversations, man, to be honest with you, were I'd send something to her, keep your chin up and your chest out and just know that you've got a lot of people that love and support you. I wanted to give her words of encouragement because I know how important that is to a family, but also let her know that if there's any questions that she has that I could possibly take some of that weight off of her shoulders or off of her family's shoulders to help assist, that I'll do it for her. And we're here for her.
Did she have questions?
It's not really because she got an attorney rather quickly, which is fine. Whatever, that's on them. again, the conversation turned into, very cordial. Thank you. Thanks for the prayers. Now, we did have a conversation at one point, ma'am, about another young man that I was looking for, Jadarius Manyweather, and I brought her up to speed on that case. And she said, and she told me explicitly, please give the prayers, our prayers to the family of Jadarius, which um, that was very important as well, because as a grieving mother, she wanted to express her concern and her prayers to another family who lost a young child.
Joining us tonight, special guest, Cajun Navy Incident Commander Josh Gill. If you know or think you know anything about the death of this young man, Nolan Wells, dial 228-769-3063. There's a $125,000 reward for information regarding what happened on Horn Island.